Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. So in this episode, it's a very interesting case situation we have going on. Basically, there's this mother named Heather who ended up shooting this guy on the street. It turns out this guy was a dude that did very terrible things to her now deceased daughter Ella. And basically, she's being charged with murder because basically why she killed him is because he ended up getting off. Like, they just let him go. But the case is very complicated because there's a lot of stuff that the jury never got to hear. So there was a lot of stuff they didn't really have a lot to go on. So because a lot of the stuff in the case got complicated because like when it originally happened, like when people searched his car, they didn't have probable cause to open the trunk where the little girl's body was at. And that was enough. It was kind of like fruit from the poisonous tree type of thing. So anything that that discovery doesn't count, which in the grand scheme of things, like no matter what that's such bullshit, you know? It's kind of like literally a dead body's back there and it's like, oh, just because the fact of the matter is that was because of the circumstances found like that, they couldn't even be told about that information. Hence why they let him off, because they didn't know about that, because like that evidence couldn't be presented in court, which is like such BS. It just, I mean, I guess I get it. Just like there has to be checks and balances with the way everything works in the law and everything, but it's still kind of like that's just a sucky situation. And it's terrible for the other sister, her older sister, Penny, which, interesting enough, is the actress from The Mist. Wasn't her character's name Alex? Most recently, I saw her pop up. She was in an episode of The Mist, the TV show, but like most recently, she was in an episode of another CBS show, Instinct. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Very different characters, just between The Mist and Instinct, even between this and Instinct, very different. But that's not that important. But the thing is, like, she held a lot of guilt in herself for what happened, and she's kind of been falling apart for it because you end up hearing about it later on, but it's like there was a lot of stuff she couldn't even say on the stand. Like, the dude who did all this was her music teacher. He gained their family trust, and he did the terrible things that he did. And she feels guilty because, like, for her, like, he bound her up and put her in a closet and everything, and like she didn't see him, but she heard his voice. It's like, he taught me piano like every week. I knew his voice, but she wasn't allowed to. The prosecutor at the time was like, nope, yeah, you can't use that. It's like, what do you... No, the ADA was like, no, you can't use that information. Like, it doesn't count as evidence. But it's like, I know his voice. Why won't you let me say what I needed to say? So because of that, she's very self-destructive. She's cutting herself. She's got like a tattoo and stuff like that. She's just kind of been falling apart. All the while, Heather is like, she doesn't want Penny on the stand, but Penny needs to be on the stand because if not, Heather's going away for a long time. But all the while this is happening, Bull isn't 100% there because Bull's stuck on jury duty because basically he's been kind of pushing it off for a very long time, and it's like, you can't push it off anymore. And he goes, and the prosecutor wanted to kick him off, jury, but the defendant's lawyer in that case, his name is Kendrick Gorman, that's the defendant. He was basically being tried for practicing law without a license. And the defending juror kind of was like, oh, I want you. And you're like, oh yeah, because she compared Bull to her client, because it's like, oh, you kind of practice law without a license too, so it kind of makes you kind of similar. Bull's trying to get out of there. He's telling the judge, yo, I gotta go. It's like, yeah, but Heather's got a lawyer, doesn't she? It's like, yeah, and you're not really a lawyer, so you need to be here as a juror. So it's kind of like, hey, everybody wins. You're stuck here being one of the jurors. And I even love Bull leaving. He's like, yeah, I try to talk my way out of it, but the judge wouldn't listen. I think she kind of has a crush on me. So that in itself played an interesting role in the episode too, because it led to a lot of like pissed off Heather moments. Because for Heather, it's like she felt like Bull wasn't really being there for her. Because it's like, I hired you to help me and you're not here. He's like, even though Chunk and Benny are doing an amazing job. It's like, we follow the letter. We work with the rest of the team. We work with Marissa, and we picked the right people. We did a good job building a good jury, but it's like she's just sitting there pissed because it's like she hired Bull. She didn't hire other people. It's that situation. So and she's kind of getting a little pissy and stuff like that, but Bull's laying it out. It's like, for one, no, you need to be who you are. The grieving mother who is a victim, who had the terrible things happen to her daughter, you know, everything that she is, you need to show people that, you know, but instead she just kind of sat there as an angry person just because she was upset about things not going her way. And Bull just kind of snapped at her at one point. It's like, I am moving heaven and earth for you, lady. I'm doing my best. These two people behind me, that being Benny and Chunk, it's like, they're doing a fantastic job. We're doing everything we can for you. The fact of the matter is, if you don't like it, we can just leave. You won't have to worry about firing me. I will just quit. Because for her, it also made her feel like Bull wasn't taking her seriously. Like, I guess he never really took time to really break down his circumstances of like, yeah, I'm legally bound and forced to do this jury situation. So I am doing my best, because everything that's happening in the courtroom is got his say-so on it. So she's acting like, you're acting like I'm not informed about everything that's going on. I am, and I'm one of the people leading the tactics for all of this. So it's that complicated situation all on its own. I also love when Bull was in the other in the Gorman case. He Gorman's lawyer wasn't really. She was kind of skating on thin ice. And so Bull did the very interesting thing of he started asking questions. In particular, he's like, well, there have been cases where judges have let the jury ask questions, so he has them written down, and he starts asking more and more, and the judge was like, okay, Mr. Bull, why don't you just ask the questions you needed to ask? And he asked some very good questions, like, well, did Gorman ever lose? No. It turns out he charged very cheaply and stuff like that. Did any of his clients ever complain about his cases and stuff, like how he handled himself? It's like, no. He's also bringing up the fact is that the reason why this all came about is because he ended up beating a very high, powerful lawyer. And it's like, city attorney, like, and if he had not done that, if he had lost the case, will we even be where we are right now? Isn't this more so a prosecutor that was looking into him just because they had such a vendetta against him, because they ended up losing against someone who had a high school diploma and 1 year at community college, which is very impressive that he did what he did. And I like the whole situation of Bull also helping him out, because Bull gives him advice, but Bull gets in an elevator with him and it's like start talking about like, oh, if I was that Gorman dude, I'd be the one to give the closing statement. And he's like, dude, you know that like the defendant and the jurors can't talk to each other about the case. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just got in this elevator, was talking to myself, oh man, good thing I never did anything like that, and walks away. And Gorman gives his testimony. And I thought it was pretty nice testimony of like how this all started for him. He was helping out a friend, and during that case, it's like a small claims or a small court case, and he ended up helping his friend in that case, and someone overheard him in the courtroom and was just like, hey, and it kind of picked up from there. And the fact of the matter is that it's not like he's done like a crap ton of cases either. He only did 16, which even he will admit, yes, it was kind of bad for him to do it. But at the same time, he was like, but is it really that wrong of me to do what I do? Because it's like, it's such a problem with the whole lawyer system. Because the fact of the matter is, the law doesn't just apply to lawyers, it applies to everyone. Like, everyone has the rights to those laws. And it's like, I'm just someone who, anything I didn't know, I just looked up online, and I used that to present to help people. Like, because you could also understand where he's coming from. He didn't make the exact point, but it borderlines that point. It's like, there are plenty of people who are not trained lawyers who can defend their own selves. You have the right to defend yourself in court. So why not get someone who's less experienced? Like, why is it saying that you have to be represented? Like, if it's someone who knows the law decently well, shouldn't that be okay, even if that person doesn't have a license? Especially when you yourself, without a license, can defend yourself. I'm just throwing that in there. It's like, that kind of fits with what he was talking about. Because the fact is, you have, like, to pay, like, a crap ton of money for, like, a good attorney. And then, like, the other side can literally have tons and tons of money so they could win a case like that. So it's like, it's not like that lawyer system is perfectly balanced, is essentially what it's kind of talking about and everything. So in the end, it turns out he wins a case, and then Bull kind of gives the Heather situation more of a attention. It is that situation once again. When it comes to the show, it kind of leaves you feeling a little conflicted because when you look at things, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like what they taking Heather's case was more so because it's like, oh, they needed a case to kind of put Tack's name back out there because the people and clients he had before, well, people who were calling before were calling in the period where Bull was gone. Also, it turns out Bull might not have been gone that long. I could have sworn Marissa was kind of talking about the fact that he was gone for like. I was under the impression, maybe I was just under the impression that he was gone throughout those entire 6 months. It turns out he might have only been gone like 3 because it's like, oh yeah, in the 3 months you were gone, clients were calling, but then eventually they just got tired of being told like, hey, we don't know when Bull's coming back. So there's that whole situation. So I thought that was kind of an interesting detail, but it's just that thing of like, yeah, they are a business, so they take cases. I mean, it's one of those things of like, is it terrible that they kind of have an ulterior motive for taking some cases? The fact is that they're taking the cases and trying to do their best. That's a good thing, right? So it kind of leaves you a little conflicted. But at the end of it all, you know, Penny ended up getting on the stand because she wanted to say what she needed to say. And basically the whole point they were trying to make with the Heather's new kind of approach they wanted to take to Heather's case was like, in defense of others, that basically it's kind of like self-defense, but like what you did was to make sure that someone else was okay. In her particular case, it was her daughter because she had already lost one daughter and was scared of the same thing happening because Penny had talked about it on the stand. That the fact of the matter is him getting caught was a happy and terrible day at the same time. Terrible because it meant they had to accept the fact is that Ella was gone. But it was great because it's like, hey, the man who did this terrible thing, he was captured. They know who he is. But then it like all fell apart because he was released. Because it's like, hey, our lives will never be the same again. But like when he's put away, we can get some semblance of a life back. We can make some life for ourselves, but you know, like they never felt safe when he was released, and it destroyed them, especially because Penny ended up running into him around the area where Heather ended up killing him. So it is that terrible situation. Because at the end of the day, like both Bull and Benny could understand, like they didn't agree with what she did, like the fact that, and that was even a conversation at the beginning where it's like, even Danny was like, yeah, she broke the law. Like, yeah, I understand her circumstances. It's fine maybe thinking about that and wanting that, but to actually act upon it. But it's like, you know, it's a complicated situation. It's like that thing that it's such a gray area type of situation that and I think it's okay to feel conflicting on something like that. So that was kind of the whole point. I mean, that ended up playing out in the trial, but I'll get to that in a second. But Penny says something I thought was so fascinating because it was like getting back to what I brought up earlier. Like the fact of the matter is, I told the ADA, I heard his voice, I knew his voice, but it was saying like that wasn't enough. And it's like, and she looks at the ADA and it's like, why did you let him go? Like all this could have been prevented if he was put in jail in the first place. So, and at you know, at the end of the day, it was a mistrial because the jury was deadlocked. Half believed she was guilty, the other half felt she was not guilty, and the ADA was kind of like, after everything she's done, all the time she spent in jail already, plus already losing a daughter, like justice has been served just because she's already been through enough. And I'm sure even the ADA kind of blamed herself because it's just like, oh, like maybe things would have been different if I had not handled the case the way I did. If I'd let her say what she needed to say back then, maybe things would be different, you know? So, luckily, everything was okay. Heather is reunited with her daughter, and maybe going forward they can feel safe, you know. So, but there's another sad side to this episode. There was a moment where Bull walked into the office, and he hears like, "Hey, Dr. Boyd," and he responds, "Hey, Cable," and he pauses and he looks at her empty desk because it hit him. Because there's even a point where Benny ended up coming across one of Cable's mugs earlier in the episode, and Danny's going over to Cable's place. The dude that was letting her in, Gabriel, was talking about the fact that the landlord wants to kind of rent the apartment out, so that stuff needs to be taken out. So it's like, could you contact her family? He's even asking, could he even come to the funeral or memorial, whatever it is. So he's hitting on Danny, but I think, you know, we don't know what his relationship was like with Cable. Like maybe they were cool, maybe they're pretty tight or whatever. But he wants to come, but I think I kind of feel like he's got his own ulterior motives of it kind of being Danny. But also we see Cable's mom come into it. It's kind of interesting because even Bull didn't recognize who she was until she gave her name. It's like, you're Cable's mom. The moment she popped up and the way she was looking, I was like, that's Cable's mom, isn't it? Because we never actually got to see her family. You know, it's kind of interesting because there was a whole episode last season where I think it was the Thanksgiving episode. She was going to go home, but she was like right out the door, but then she didn't go in. It's one of those things in retrospect that makes you sad. You hope at the very least that they did spend some time together in between then and now. Like, you know, you just don't want, you know, I don't remember. Was that during Thanksgiving? I think it was Thanksgiving. I don't think it was Christmas. I'm pretty sure it was Thanksgiving. And I think she spent the holidays with her family at some point in time in between like season 2 and now. But you get what I was trying to say. So you could tell it's definitely hitting Bull hard because he's asking Marissa to help with the whole Cable's mom situation. You just see him kind of sitting there, just kind of still hitting all of them that she's gone, you know. So like I said, I feel like there's going to be like the leading thread line this season potentially. Them still, you know, it's the second episode, still kind of reeling with that, you know, that loss. So it's just kind of, I don't know. It's a very interesting episode all together. A lot of sad points in it. Like they try to balance that with a little levity in this episode in certain regards. So I thought that was kind of pretty nice. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.